Hello, and thanks for taking the time to join this presentation about the journey Fortinet can offer towards the worlds of ZTNA and SASE in conjunction with our partners Kubus. My name is David Nichol, and my area of focus here at Fortinet is the world of zero trust and the solutions which can help organizations implement zero trust approaches in their cybersecurity environments. There's been a lot of talk recently about both zero trust and ZTNA more specifically, and also about the adoption of SASE architectures. But the path forward from where organizations are today and the underlying reasoning behind these moves is not always very clear. So I want to talk about how Kubus and Fortinet can help organizations such as your own on the journey from where you are today towards a zero trust driven environment that resolves some of the main networking and security challenges that you face. If we take a step back to consider the main challenges that have driven the requirements for SASE type architectures, Fortinet see the following common networking, security, and operational issues facing organizations. And these problems have been exacerbated by the journey to the cloud that most organizations have undertaken. The first challenge arose with the move of applications to the cloud. Those moves bring with a much greater reliance on the internet connectivity from all user locations. And in a lot of cases, organizations were dealing with expensive and inefficient internet connectivity solutions, often routing everything back via a central site. At the same time, they typically had site to site inefficiencies and internal LAN security issues. But that challenge has largely been dealt with by the introduction of SD-WAN for the provision of direct internet access from all office locations and for solving site-to-site inefficiencies. And Fortinet's Secure SD-WAN helps in particular here by integrating security into that SD-WAN solution and also in allowing the extension down into integrated SD branch capabilities for resolving LAN issues. Fortinet are a market leader in the SD-WAN space, combining routing, SD-WAN, and security into a single form factor with our FortiGate firewalls. And many organizations have adopted that secure SD-WAN approach and extended it down into the LAN with SD branch by using our switches and APs. And so that is the resolution to that first problem. And if you aren't already familiar with Fortinet's secure SD-WAN and SD branch solutions, then we can happily have separate discussions around those. But for this session, I want to focus on the next steps from SD-WAN to resolve these other problems. So just as many organizations were completing their SD-WAN projects, there was a major shift to home working brought about by the pandemic. And although things are getting back to normal and people are returning to the office, employees and employers now demand flexibility to work from anywhere and support hybrid working. And there's a growing recognition that the legacy VPN solutions that have been used as part of remote working today lack the flexibility and granular controls that are required, often providing broad network access to open internal networks and giving excessive network visibility that can increase the risk from some of the cyber threats that are out there. And alongside that remote access issue, we also have the challenge that the traditional model of a single route via an on premise firewall for security controls has been eroded. Instead, we now have users spread over multiple locations, including the home. So we have multiple network edges, and we also have applications distributed across multiple locations, including the cloud. So a new secure user access model is required to take account of the fact that we can't have all these remote users routing back through our main corporate firewall. These users can now be anywhere. They need to be secured in all of those locations with the same security policy capabilities that they'd receive when in the office. And of course, the reason these issues are top of agenda is because of the risk that the work from anywhere scenario can bring. Working from insecure home networks, shared networks, at the airport, and so on brings with it a much increased risk, with users more open to attack, and then potentially carrying malware back into the office. And this can have a serious impact on the organization, as we saw from a doubling of ransomware attacks during 2021. So now we understand what the challenges are, let's take a look at what the analysts propose as the solution. So there's universal agreement that the best approach to all of these issues is for networking and security to converge. And if we look at the Forrester and Gartner models for achieving this, they are slightly different, but inside they incorporate exactly the same core capabilities of SD-WAN for network connectivity, as we've mentioned, ZTNA for secure internal application access, secure web gateway for secure internet access, CASB for secure access to SaaS applications, and firewall as a service for delivering firewall capabilities from the cloud. Now, in the Gartner world, they call this SASE, Secure Access Services Edge. Now, in the original Gartner SASE framework definition, they had all of these capabilities grouped together as a single cloud-delivered service. But there's been a bit of a realization from Gartner that there's virtually no vendors offering that complete package, especially incorporating SD-WAN. So they've broken SASE down by hiving off SD-WAN and leaving the rest of what they now call Secure Services Edge. But this is still a very cloud-centric model, focused on organizations that have completed their cloud journey and have all their applications and resources in the cloud. So basically, all office locations have a thin edge utilizing the cloud-delivered security. Now, Forrester take a more pragmatic approach. They accept that the vast majority of organizations are still living in a hybrid world with many resources still on premise or in data centers. So their model at the zero trust edge includes both what we term thick network edges with SD-WAN and on-premise firewalls for those on-premise users and resources, and cloud-delivered thin edge capabilities for remote users and potentially for small branch locations where an on-premise firewall isn't viable. But the important point is that at their heart, these two models include the same core capabilities of SD-WAN, ZTNA, Secure Web Gateway, Firewall as a Service, and CASB. So that's the functionality that organizations need. And the delivery method for that functionality is of secondary importance. So how do Fortinet go about delivering these capabilities? Well, we've already touched on our FortiGate firewall-based SD-WAN offering, and as mentioned, we typically see this as the starting point in this journey for most organizations. And as mentioned, this can be extended down to the on-premise network using our SD branch solutions, specifically our switches and APs. It makes sense that before you start sending your traffic out to the cloud, you first need to sort out the resiliency and security of your on-premise network and your direct internet access from each location. And consolidating these multiple technologies in the shape of SD-WAN, security, wireless, and switching into an integrated solution platform has been an incredibly successful and beneficial approach for Fortinet customers. The good news is that for the next steps in the journey, our solutions are modular and fully integrated into our security fabric, allowing organizations to leverage any investment they've already made in the Fortinet platform with SD-WAN and SD-Branch. So looking at solving that problem of providing secure access to applications in a better way than VPN, that's where ZTNA comes in. ZTNA has been baked into FortiOS, the operating system that underpins our FortiGate firewalls. And that means that as an existing FortiGate customer, you can simply enable ZTNA today in conjunction with our FortiClient endpoint agent and gain secure private application access at the same time as reducing the attack surface and risk of ransomware. And this is a solution for users in any location, on-premise or remote, and for accessing applications anywhere, on-prem, in the data center, or in the cloud. And then to address the issue of delivering firewall-type security to remote users, this is where we utilize our FortiSASE platform, which fully integrates with our ZTNA, using the same FortiClient endpoint agent for connecting into the FortiSASE platform as we use for the ZTNA application connections. And because our approach makes use of common components for VPN, ZTNA, and SASE, this makes the whole migration process to adopt and roll out ZTNA and SASE approaches very simple and flexible. You can adopt ZTNA as rapidly or as cautiously as you require because you can operate a mixed VPN and ZTNA environment and take small steps on an application by application basis to move to ZTNA, and then continue with a move down the SASE path for those remote user scenarios should you want to do that, using exactly the same endpoint agent and management tools. So let's take a look at those ZTNA and FortiSASE solutions in a little bit more detail. Starting off with ZTNA, this is all about bringing the zero trust approach of never trust, always verify into the realm of application access. So this involves providing the capability to verify users, verify devices, and verify the security posture of those users and devices before granting access to an application, which in turn allows you to deliver on the zero trust principle of least privilege access. And the reasons why we want to do this are very powerful. It's going to help deal with that fragmentation of the perimeter and the fact that we now have users and applications everywhere. It's going to help reduce the attack surface because ZTNA restricts access to purely the application being used. It doesn't provide network level visibility in the way that VPN or general LAN-based access does. And that in turn helps us mitigate the threat from ransomware because you're removing the ability for threats to move laterally across the network by limiting their visibility. And then the fact that ZTNA controls don't care whether the application is on-premise or in the cloud, and that they provide a common access mechanism for users anywhere, whilst delivering the same level of security, helps to ease that journey of applications to the cloud for organizations. And that consistency of user experience also makes the user's life easier and more productive. They simply use the application and don't need to worry about knowing where that application is or dealing with VPNs for remote access scenarios. So a ZTNA solution should deliver on all the core zero trust controls when a user wants to access an application, from checking the identity of the device and ensuring that it's authorized, to also checking the user identity, including options for MFA, in order to deliver role-based access control. And not forgetting checks of the user and device security posture. For example, does this device have any known vulnerabilities, or is it running all the endpoint security controls that our corporate policy requires before we give access to this application? And only if all checks are passed is application access granted, and visibility is to that specific application only, nothing else on the network. And not forgetting that all of this is happening over secure connections with full security inspection and logging capabilities. So, how does Fortinet ZTNA operate? Well, as I already mentioned, our ZTNA solution is embedded into FortiOS. So anyone with standalone FortiGate firewalls or those with their firewalls acting as an SD-WAN solution can make use of the ZTNA application access proxy features. The only requirement is to install the ZTNA agent on endpoints, but this is our unified endpoint agent FortiClient, which is also used by FortiSASE, as we'll see later, and which can also be used as a VPN agent. And this is what makes it a very simple migration path between solutions for organizations. When the device first connects, posture information such as device type, identity, whether AV or the local endpoint firewall is enabled, whether there's any device vulnerabilities existing, and so on, is sent to the management plane, the FortiClient EMS, which can be hosted on-prem or in the cloud. And in return, the device is going to receive a certificate for identification purposes and a set of what we call ZTNA tags, which are labels based on security posture rules that you set up on EMS. So, for example, an endpoint may receive a tag called Compliance Level 1 if it has no known vulnerabilities, AV running and up to date, and let's say BitLocker encryption enabled. And that tagging is a dynamic process. If something changes in the security telemetry of the device, then a tag could be added or removed. So, for example, someone or something disabling AV would result in the removal of that example tag that we just described. Now, this certificate and tag information is then shared by EMS to the FortiGate devices that are acting as ZTNA proxies, which can be on-premise appliances or VMs in your cloud environments. So then when a user tries to connect to a protected application, it's going to be directed to the appropriate FortiGate for zero trust validation. Once we've validated the posture and the identity of the user and device, access is granted and traffic tunneled securely to the application. No user or device is trusted by default, regardless of where they connect from, on-net or off-net. All users are identified and devices validated, and access is granted to the application only if the user and device is permitted, and only if the security posture requirements for this application are met. And finally, continuous posture reevaluation means that access can be removed at any time. If the security posture changes to be outside of our policy criteria for the application being accessed, then access is removed. So given that this ZTNA capability is available in our FortiGate firewalls, existing FortiGate or SD-WAN customers just need to add the FortiClient license if they don't already have it, and with very minimal changes, they can make a significant contribution to security and resolve that problem of secure application access for all user and application locations. And therefore, this is the most common second step in the journey. And now let's move on to that third problem, which is the delivery of security controls for remote users who don't have that easy access to the corporate firewall that on-premise users can use. This is where our FortiSASE platform comes in. For remote users, we're really looking at two key functional use cases: the provision of secure internet access for those users and the provision of secure access to corporate applications, which may be on-premise, in data centers, or in cloud environments like AWS and Azure. So FortiSASE will give us the secure web gateway functionality and firewall as a service capabilities that are part of the Gartner SASE or Forrester ZTE models. And it's going to integrate seamlessly with the ZTNA capability that we've just outlined for application access. And because this is a cloud delivered solution, it's also going to provide another benefit of the Gartner SASE model of helping organizations move from a CapEx to an OpEx cost model. So looking at our FortiSASE platform in more detail. Obviously, this is cloud delivered, and it's important to note that FortiSASE is not delivered in the public cloud. It's delivered in a private Fortinet cloud, and that eases the ability for ourselves to set up any new points of presence. And the core FortiSASE instance that's deployed for a customer is a virtual instance. So that means as demand grows, we're able to scale this horizontally very, very quickly using the power of automation. And we're also using our award-winning AI threat intelligence service across the FortiSASE platform. Under the covers, this is all built on a core of established FortiGate technology powered by FortiOS, which once again means that we're able to use our FortiGuard services from a threat intelligence perspective. Now, in terms of those core capabilities of the SASE and ZTE models, this is going to deliver on the secure web gateway and firewall as a service requirements. A lot of those core capabilities that you see in a FortiGate next generation firewall, we obviously inherit within FortiSASE. So a lot of the powerful capabilities of a firewall, but coming back to the SASE mantra from Gartner, this all needs to be intuitive and easy to use. So configuring these different services has been made very straightforward for the end customer through a dedicated FortiSASE management interface. And because we're building this on FortiOS, it's providing exactly the same type of security capabilities and policy controls that you have in our FortiGate firewalls and other solutions. So you get consistent security controls across all network and endpoint locations. So how does Fortinet's SASE framework deliver on those core use cases for remote users, which we mentioned earlier? Well, this is where our FortiSASE remote product offering comes in, which is the first Fortinet product offering built on the FortiSASE platform. So FortiSASE Remote is going to deliver on that secure internet access need for remote users, both in an agent-based manner for your managed endpoints and an agentless option for devices that can't have an endpoint agent installed. And it's also going to integrate with the ZTNA capability that we outlined earlier for private application access. And then in addition, and we'll touch on this later, those capabilities are extended with inline CASB and inline sandbox functionality as well. So let's take these initial main use cases in turn. So how? Starting with the delivery of secure internet access for remote users. So essentially, remote users are needing to secure access to internet-based applications and also to carry out general internet browsing. So as mentioned, FortiSASE Remote provides two different ways of doing this, agent-based and agentless. So for agent-based access, we're using that same FortiClient agent that we use for ZTNA to redirect all internet-bound traffic to the FortiSASE POP. And then from an agentless device perspective, maybe you have devices that can't have FortiClient installed, but you still want to gain that secure web gateway capability of FortiSASE. For those devices, we can use FortiSASE as a proxy, either using pack file proxy configuration for devices that support it, or entry of proxy details manually into devices. And FortiSASE can be integrated with Active Directory, including Azure AD, or with Radius or other identity providers to help with user onboarding and client deployment, and to operate from a single sign-on perspective. So this will deliver that secure internet access for your remote users that your on-premise users take for granted by going via the corporate firewall. And for the agent-based devices, you're also going to get all the added benefits from that FortiClient agent. So you've got the vulnerability scanning, you've got USB device control, even including AV endpoint protection if you want that. And from a license perspective, we've also tried to make this as simple as possible. So this is a simple subscription that includes everything needed, and it can be either user or device-based. You choose what suits you best. So just summarizing the FortiSASE security capabilities, a lot of these are going to be familiar if you're familiar with FortiGate firewalls, because it's the same FortiOS delivered security capabilities that FortiSASE is built on. So you can build profiles for AV and anti-malware, web filtering, IPS, DLP, application control, DNS filtering, and SSL inspection. So that's the first main use case of delivering secure internet access for your remote users using FortiSASE Remote. Moving on to the second use case for those remote users in terms of secure access to their corporate applications, this is delivered using exactly the same ZTNA capability that we saw earlier. So this is where the integration between FortiSASE and our ZTNA comes into play. There's no additional license to enable this capability within FortiSASE, and because you already have the FortiClient agent as part of FortiSASE Remote, you have all the components necessary. You just need those FortiGate firewalls that are going to act as the application ZTNA proxies, as we discussed earlier. So in a FortiSASE world, the only key difference to the ZTNA architecture that we saw earlier is that the deployment and management for the FortiClient agent moves from that EMS management portal into FortiSASE. We've basically taken the FortiClient EMS component and merged it into the FortiSASE management plane. So all the endpoint management, deployment of FortiClient, and management of the ZTNA posture rules and tags is carried out in the FortiSASE management portal rather than needing the FortiClient EMS portal. Other than that, the ZTNA access to applications operates exactly as we saw previously. So complete integration between the ZTNA capability and the FortiSASE environment. And then just expanding on that final benefit of FortiSASE about moving from a CapEx to an OpEx model, traditionally any organization trying to build out a cloud-based security services stack by themselves is going to need to have an initial outlay to buy the hardware or from a virtual perspective, the host to run the VM instances on. But there is no CapEx involved from the FortiSASE perspective. It's a completely OpEx model based on those subscriptions that we mentioned earlier, starting very small to very high numbers of users and devices that need to connect into the infrastructure. All of the infrastructure provisioning and costs are handled by Fortinet. You as the customer just have a simple OpEx subscription to deal with. And just finishing off on FortiSASE with a few other features. So you've got extensive analytics within FortiSASE. You're able to drill down into the analytics both from a traffic, from an event, and from a security standpoint. And if you have FortiSIEM or any third-party SIEM solution, you have the ability to export all that telemetry out of FortiSASE as well. And that includes the vulnerability information gathered by FortiClient to see what vulnerabilities are on those endpoint devices. You also have capabilities like being able to monitor the bandwidth, manage the endpoints, manage the onboarding of users. So very easy to configure and very easy to use. And there's extensive built-in logging and reporting also. As Gartner stressed, as well as the core security functionality, a SASE platform should be easy to use and provide good visibility and analytics. And that's exactly what we've aimed to achieve with FortiSASE. So in terms of some key takeaways when it comes to the FortiSASE for those remote users, this is going to help you deliver that security capability to those users whose traffic isn't going through your corporate firewall, providing those secure web gateway and firewall as a service capabilities from the SASE and ZTE models. It's a highly scalable cloud platform that we can scale out very rapidly, and it's designed for simplicity. Simplicity in the onboarding process, in configuration and management, and in reporting, analytics, and troubleshooting. So that FortiSASE remote offering delivers a solution for that third problem in our journey of delivering firewall level security to those off-premise users by adding secure web gateway and firewall as a service capabilities to our existing SD-WAN and ZTNA portfolio. So now you've seen how we can address the main concerns faced by organizations and also allow you to adopt those SASE/ZTE capabilities in a staged manner towards your goals. But there is one other potential issue here. We know we're not the only player in this space, and organizations will quite rightly be looking around at other solutions for different elements of the security needs. So why should they choose Fortinet over the competition? In order to reduce management overhead and gain the best security intelligence, it's key that a SASE framework, which by definition provides the combination of SD-WAN, ZTNA, secure web gateway, and firewall as a service elements, is simple to manage and fully integrated. And we believe our single vendor solution and our wider platform-based security fabric is the right approach. In addition, our unified endpoint management agent allows customers to benefit from multiple security functions with a single install, whether it's FortiSASE connectivity, ZTNA, VPN-based remote access, or local endpoint security. For organizations that go down a multi-vendor path, the lack of integration between all these elements can cause gaps in their defense and leave the door open to some of the risks that we outlined at the start. And that, combined with the pervasive industry issue of there being a cybersecurity skill shortage, means that multi-vendor solutions and integrations can leave those gaps in organizational defense, as well as lead to problematic increases in the admin burden. Our concept of a unified client agent using the same endpoint agent for VPN, ZTNA, and SASE connectivity, and of having FortiOS Everywhere, is part of our long-term company vision of delivering a consistent security experience however you choose to consume it, whether that's in firewalls or in a SASE cloud form factor. And this allows a simple introduction of these SASE capabilities to an existing solution because the underlying technologies are identical and integrated. And it also simplifies the management as well as ensuring that security can be configured more globally by using common policy controls. And similarly, with ZTNA across all solutions, sharing the same ZTNA posture database, the information can be collected once and shared across the whole solution stack, delivering a simple, consistent security solution across all interconnected components. So the combination of our market-leading secure SD-WAN solution, combined with ZTNA for private application access and FortiSASE remote for remote user security, together with the FortiOS Everywhere concept, which delivers a true integrated solution, allows customers to adopt comprehensive ZTNA and SASE type capabilities either quickly or in a staged manner as required. So that FortiOS Everywhere and integrated Fortinet security fabric approach removes that last issue of multi-vendor complexity. But we're not stopping there. We haven't yet mentioned how CASB fits into all of this. So let's touch on that. Our aim is to have a continuing drive to enhance the consistency of security across all customer scenarios. And one of the gaps that most ZTNA solutions in the market have is that they're focused purely on providing zero trust controls and checks when accessing in-house applications. But what about SaaS apps? What if we could also take the added security that we get with ZTNA and apply that to access controls for our SaaS-based applications as well? So just as a reminder, ZTNA is allowing us to check the user, check the device, and check the security posture before delivering access to in-house applications, alleviating that wide network access and high network visibility associated with user VPNs. What if you could take those zero trust checks and dynamic posture checking and apply them to SaaS application access? So this is where our inline CASB capability comes in. Now, Fortinet has delivered a traditional CASB system for some time now, but where our inline CASB expands on that is by sharing those dynamic ZTNA posture checks into the process. Because remember, with our FortiOS Everywhere model, we're looking to share that ZTNA posture database across multiple capabilities. So we've added inline CASB capabilities to both our FortiSASE platform and to our FortiGate firewalls. And that means whether our user is accessing a SaaS application from a remote location using a managed endpoint via FortiSASE Remote, or accessing from your managed locations via FortiGate, their SaaS application access can be controlled via inline CASB controls. And again, this helps you have consistent security controls across all your applications, private apps and SaaS apps. So organizations can end up with a universal enforcement of zero trust controls delivered across the combination of Fortinet SD-WAN, FortiSASE, and inline CASB to cover all user and application scenarios. So I hope that's helped give you some insight as to how we see that journey for organizations. Building on the strengths of the FortiGate firewalls with their embedded secure SD-WAN capability, with ZTNA delivered via those very same firewalls combined with FortiClient, and then expanding that proposition out even further to deliver firewall services from the cloud to your remote users with FortiSASE Remote, securing all their internet access whilst maintaining integration with that ZTNA capability for securing their in-house application access. And then finally, extending that story even further with our inline CASB functionality on those FortiGate and FortiSASE platforms to extend ZTNA controls to SaaS applications. So together with our partners Kubus, we can offer further discussions around any specific parts of this, but I hope this has provided you with that overview vision and explained the steps that we advise you to take on that journey and how you can leverage an investment in FortiGate firewalls to achieve what would take seismic shifts in platform and multiple components and management interfaces, as well as much more complex licensing scenarios with other vendors or mixed vendor approaches. Thank you very much.